Rolling Tin Fist. Hello, man. It's been a while. Well, not a big while, but longer than I usually like to take to put up a new video. I was going to do a few recordings before I went off on a trip mixing business with pleasure, but unfortunately, time got the best of me, so I'm doing this while I'm somewhere in the Southwest. What I wanted to talk about is power of the purse. Congress in the United States has the power to influence what the executive branch does, executive being the president, by deciding whether they will vote for monies to be spent on an aspect of the budget or voting against such things. So they essentially can use their right under the Constitution to authorize funding for something or not authorize funding to basically control that policy to a certain extent. Of course, the president does have things like executive authority and vetoes, but for the purpose of this video, I'm focusing strictly on power of the purse and really the power it gives men, especially those men in a relationship such as marriage or a long-term non-marital relationship, or even if you're a man with a girlfriend or someone you're dating. The idea being men have been historically seen as the providers, that is, the ones who will pay, whether the recipient is deserving of it or not, or has provided something in exchange for that financial consideration, that is money, that the male is paying. What happens if you're a man who has been in a relationship for a long period of time, depending on what generation you are, how old you are, you may have been socialized to believe that as you're a man, it's your job to provide, translating to you're the one who foots the bill, whether it's dates, whether it's literally paying household bills, whether it's even as simple as buying drinks, which is the first level in my experience for a young man. The idea being you have to prove yourself to be capable of providing for a family. I think that's really the genesis for all of these little tests, financial tests, if you will. The idea that the man has to prove himself over time of his ability to not only amass resources, but enough to be able to take care of the women and whatever dependents she may have. This may be offspring, or if you're unlucky, extended family. Most men either do this out of obligation, do it because they've drank the Kool-Aid saying, oh, if you work hard and are able to provide in a manner financially for your family, that makes you a real man. Now, before some of you men out there start screaming or yelling, there's nothing wrong in and of itself, okay, for supporting your family. If you have children that you sired, you should obviously bear the legal responsibility that you've taken upon yourself in terms of providing food, shelter, um, and any of their other needs to get them to a place where they're self-sustaining. What I'm talking about are things that are outside uh, survival. For example, purchasing things specifically for women or specifically that women direct you to. Let's start with something very basics. Drinks at a club. There's no written rule I've ever seen that says a man must buy a woman a drink at a club. What about the opposite? Why shouldn't a woman buy man drinks at the club? What stops a man from saying, hey, you know what? Instead of me buying you a drink, why don't you buy me a drink? But there's this expectation that it's the man's job. That's how he proves himself. Back to the power of the purse. If you haven't gotten the habit of really being careful about when you make outlays of cash, particularly towards women, you'll find yourself in a cycle where you're basically doling out cash either to reinforce your belief that you're a man or in order to get some kind of favor from the female in exchange, or just simply out of guilt or pressure or shame. And if you go down that route, you'll find yourself making a lot of money, but most likely broke. In other words, the woman will have what she needs, the kids or maybe the other dependents will have what they need, but you'll find yourself not having much of what you need met. And that builds resentment, that builds stress, that builds you working more and more, not necessarily more for yourself, but to make up for any um, shortcomings the woman might feel she has. This comes more into play, as Sandman pointed out in one of his videos, I don't remember which, when a man, for example, is making, let's say $50,000, and then a recession comes around and he's making half that much. Okay, strictly by the numbers, one would expect everybody to cut back the amount of expenditures and outlays of cash that they make in order to compensate for that man's reduced income. But what typically happens is that there's expectation that the man must somehow figure out a way to maintain the standard of living despite the reduced in income. And the way he typically, if he's married or a blue pillar, expected to do that is to basically forego his personal needs or desires. It may mean, like in my case, for example, I ended up having to get rid of my vehicle to maintain the financial stability of the household, as opposed to enforcing, okay, everybody needs to cut back, and here is a agreeable way to do that. Here's an equitable way to do that. Doom, 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 doom.